Hello again, and thank you for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. Up first on the, let's see, hazardous weather graphic, still have that flood advisory out for the northern Copper River Basin and the shaded area there, Gulkana River into Lake Louise Road, and that's out now through mid-afternoon Wednesday. Otherwise, there are no other watches, warnings, or advisories out around the state at all. And kind of a fire weather update here across interior Alaska. For today, it was dry and breezy in the interior, especially up over the northern interior with gusty northeast winds, and some scattered thunderstorms again in the Alaska Range and over the southwest mountains. And of course, the lightning could start new fires. And then wet and cool conditions for the Panhandle today. They'll be shifting northwestward and across southern Alaska later tonight and tomorrow. And the outlook is for cool and wet for south central Alaska into midweek, although Wednesday will kind of recover a little bit from tomorrow, but still in the 60s, lower 70s. Continued dry and breezy in the western and northern interior. So kind of going into a typical June weather pattern here this week. And from there, taking a look at the fire danger graphic for grass, extreme, quite area of extreme, from northeast to southwest there, especially over the Yukon River and the northern Kuskokwim River Valley, right into the central interior and near and north of Fairbanks there, right on up to the Yukon Flats areas. And then high to very high danger, even on the north slope, western north slope, due to the gusty northeast winds and dry conditions up there. Into the Brooks Range, but southern Alaska, south and east of the, well, actually south and east of the Alaska Range, pretty good conditions, not even in the high category now for today, and a little bit dry over Bristol Bay, but still not too bad there in the Kuskokwim Delta, low to medium at worst. And the Panhandle, a lot of precipitation there. They're down in the low category, even up over the northern inside water areas, all the way to Skagway. And satellite imagery today showing a band of clouds moving northwestward and westward along the eastern North Gulf Coast, pushing into Yakutat and pushing up over the northern Panhandle. A little bit of a break in the central Panhandle, and then another batch of moisture coming into especially Prince of Wales Island and across the southern areas there. Fair amount of precipitation occurred with that, but generally cooler marine air pushing low clouds into Cook Inlet and many areas of the Susitna-Manuska Valley, Kenai Peninsula today. Low clouds in over Bristol Bay, as you can see, but a lot of sunshine over the northern Bering Sea. Pribilof, St. Paul had sunshine today. Temperature in the mid-40s, north winds at about 15 miles an hour. And then low clouds and fog coming through the Bering Strait to the north shore of St. Lawrence Island, but a lot of sunshine over the interior again, especially along the Yukon River Valley there, Seward Peninsula into the northwest interior. Brooks Range pretty good. Low clouds and fog, central eastern Arctic coast. Temperatures in the 20s, northeast winds pretty gusty, especially on the eastern Arctic coast, with temperatures in the lower to mid 30s there. Northeast gusting 35 miles an hour at Wainwright, and gust of 47 miles an hour at Point Lay. And infrared showing that band of moisture we're watching moving up over the northern Panhandle, spreading into the Gulf of Alaska and eventually westward. Had some showers breaking out today over western Cook Inlet and the western Alaska Range there up into the Talkeetnas. Showers starting to build. Not much in the way of lightning strikes, but later this afternoon, this evening, probably be a little more extensive, especially over the Kilbrook and Kilbrook Mountains. I believe I pronounced that right. Otherwise, system south of the Aleutians there stays to the south. You can see spinning, but not much northward progress there, and then not much going on up over the Bering Sea or the Arctic Ocean for that matter. On the chart, there's that trough with the rain that's brought anywhere from, let's see, Sitka, Juneau had about 4/10 of an inch of precipitation the last 24 hours, while Cake, Wrangell, and Petersburg had 7 to 8 tenths of an inch, and Heidelberg about 1/3 of an inch of precipitation. Otherwise, Seward had about 2/100 of an inch of some light shower activity earlier today, and that kind of scattered shower condition across southwest Alaska as well. For example, Igigik picked up about 1/100 of an inch, so pretty light rainfall amounts out that way. But cloudier, cooler conditions help improve the fire danger, again, as we saw from Bristol Bay up and across southern, south central Alaska and the Copper River Basin. Let's see, it was Eureka had thunderstorm late last night and brought about 4/10 of an inch of rain there. So where the showers occur, they're getting pretty good rainfall, but it's very concentrated, not too widespread. Otherwise, low clouds and fog over the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians, and the clearing, as I mentioned, around the Pribilofs right up to the south coast of St. Lawrence Island. But you can see a tight gradient there, and again, those winds gusting 35 to 45 miles an hour in the western Arctic coast, and that pretty gusty wind condition blowing through the Bering Strait, Tin City seeing sustained winds about 30 miles an hour, and then it lightens up towards St. Lawrence Island. Light winds elsewhere around the state. And for tonight, again, breezy conditions through the passes of the Brooks Range and the western Arctic coast. Less wind on the eastern Arctic coast, but still a chance with temperatures in the 20s. Fog, low clouds, and whatever precipitation falls will be in the form of flurries. I don't want to say light snow because it'll be very insignificant. There won't be any accumulations. Otherwise, look for precipitation to increase from west to east and pushing northwest in across south central Alaska, showers and rain. And into the Copper River Basin, some of that spilling north of the eastern Alaska Range. Stays kind of showery over the Panhandle, but those will be diminishing over the southern Panhandle late tonight. And for tomorrow, looks like a break in between the system moisture that moves westward across southern Alaska and then the moisture with that next front pushing into Dixon Entrance late tomorrow afternoon. But this maybe partly and mostly cloudy southern Panhandle, mostly sunny in the north there. And then periods of rain and showers across southern Alaska, definitely cooler temperatures, highs 55 to 65, and then still pretty dry and windy over the northern interior. No change out over the Bering Sea. Areas of low clouds and fog, high pressure continuing to dominate the Bering Sea. It seems like it has for several weeks now, and that doesn't change much on Wednesday, although the main ridge axis kind of retreats back to the northwest there with a weak low developing over the Alaska Peninsula. And a little bit drier conditions, a little more sunshine. Temperatures will recover. Kenai Peninsula, south central Alaska areas, 60s to lower 70s. And looks pretty good for the North Gulf Coast, and partly sunny for the Kodiak Island area, the light winds and showers over the southern Panhandle and over the northern areas. Maybe a break, a few sun breaks possible over the central southeast coast. Stays windy over the northern interior. You can see quite a gradient there from the north slope across the Brooks Range into the Kobuk, Koyukuk valleys to the northwest coast. And northerly winds continue to blow over the northern Bering Sea, diminishing as you get down toward the Pribilofs. Lows for tonight, mid-20s to near 30 for the north slope and the Arctic coast, with lower 30s down into St. Lawrence Island and the northern Seward Peninsula. Otherwise, 40s and 50s southern Alaska, upper 40s Kodiak Island, and near 40 for the Aleutians, mid-30s for the Pribilofs, upper 40s to lower 50s for the Panhandle, and mid-40s in the Copper River Basin. Highs for tomorrow with the moisture, clouds, and rain. Look for upper 50s to lower 60s. That's about it for south central Alaska, the Kenai Peninsula, Kodiak Island, Copper River Basin areas. Coming back up into the lower into the 60s for the Panhandle, mid-70s central interior, maybe near 80 out toward Sleepmute and toward Bethel, with 70s right out to the Yukon Delta coastline, near 70 for Nome, lower 30s for the Arctic coast, and mid-30s for the North Slope. Otherwise, upper 40s to near 50 for the Aleutians, upper 50s for the Alaska Peninsula, mid-50s for Kodiak Island. Lows Wednesday morning, back into the 20s, lower to mid for the Arctic coast, or actually mid to upper 20s for the Arctic coast and North Slope, and lower 30s for the northern Bering Sea, northern Seward Peninsula, mid-40s south coast of the Seward Peninsula, and lows in the 40s for most of interior Alaska, some areas over the southwest interior in the lower 50s, near 40 for the Aleutians and the Pribilofs, mid to upper 40s for the Bristol Bay area, near 50 for the Panhandle. Highs, Skagway, Haines, 71, otherwise upper 50s to lower 60s, and back into the lower 70s for the Susitna Valley, and in the 70s over the interior, mid-30s for the Arctic coast, lower 40s for the northern Bering Sea, near 50 for the Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
VFR again across much of the interior. Band of IFR now continues to push eastward and a little to the north, covering Prince William Sound and the North Gulf Coast Range into the Wrangell Mountains, down along the southern Kenai Peninsula, the southern Kodiak Island, and the northern Panhandle. A little bit of IFR with some marginal VFR over the central and southern. Excuse me. It's about my 18th sneeze this morning. And then IFR, all of the Aleutians, and up to about St. George Island, St. Paul marginal VFR, the Alaska Peninsula marginal, and some IFR on the north coast of the Seward Peninsula, and IFR for the eastern Arctic coast and North Slope. And for the afternoon, looking like a pretty good chance for some IFR conditions there for the eastern Arctic coast, marginal VFR on the central coast, but from about Point Ley down to Kivalina, VFR, and interior VFR. Some marginal VFR along the Alaska Range and locally up into the upper Tanana Valley there to just south of Eagle, and then down across the eastern Copper River Basin. In fact, most of the Copper River Basin, marginal VFR for the afternoon. Some IFR there for Passage Canal and Whittier, maybe Portage as well. Otherwise, VFR for Cook Inlet and the Susitna Valley. Marginal VFR for the Manuska Valley. East side of Kodiak Island, chance of IFR. VFR for the Panhandle. IFR for the Aleutians and southern Bering Sea. Marginal VFR up to about St. Paul Island, but north of there, VFR. And now the VFR area pushes southward to include St. George Island, but from the western Alaska Peninsula westward to Attu Island, all IFR in the southern Bering Sea. And that IFR zone slides across Sitkinak and up the east side of Kodiak Island, Fognak Island into southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak, Ketchimak Bays, marginal VFR. Marginal VFR across much of south central Alaska now, most of the Copper River Basin, but drying out, becoming VFR for the eastern Prince William Sound, eastern North Gulf Coast, and the northern two-thirds of the Panhandle, with marginal VFR pushing back in across the southern southeast coast. IFR eastern Arctic coast, Bering Strait coast to the north shore of St. Lawrence Island. And for Wednesday afternoon, marginal VFR central eastern Arctic coast. Good VFR again, all of interior Alaska back to VFR Wednesday afternoon after that surge of moisture moves through tomorrow and tomorrow night. And then marginal VFR areas of over the southeast coast, and still a lot of IFR over the southern Bering Sea from roughly Falls Pass westward to Shimianat-2. Marginal VFR for the Alaska Peninsula. Marginal VFR for the Pribilofs up to the southwest coast, Togiak Bay, and south and southeast Kodiak Island. Passes, Anatuvik, VFR becoming marginal tomorrow in the afternoon with some building clouds. Otherwise, Adigan staying VFR the entire day. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR trending toward marginal VFR in the afternoon. And rainy, downward trending conditions becoming marginal, especially on the eastern entrances of all three of those passes. Windy, optimistically going to hold VFR. Isabel, VFR becoming marginal. And for Mentasta, marginal VFR. Tanita looks marginal throughout the day Tuesday, as does Portage, with even a risk of IFR in the eastern entrance. And Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR becoming VFR, so slower conditions early on becoming pretty good through the mid part of the day through the afternoon. Freezing level, pretty good gradient up there north and along the Brooks Range, 2,000 feet up to about 8,000 feet over the northern interior, back down over Norton Sound, 4,000 to 6,000 feet western Aleutians, 6,000 to 8,000 feet there along the North Gulf Coast, mostly 5,000 to 6,000 over the Panhandle. And icing, areas of rime or mixed icing of the isolated moderate variety over southeast interior Alaska there, including Cook Inlet, down to about Kodiak Island, and a little bit better chance there in Prince William Sound areas to the eastern Alaska Range. Otherwise, icing free for the Panda. That next batch, at least through tomorrow, staying south of even the Queen Charlotte Islands. Icing free out to the west and to the north. Jet stream, not much to look at here. The main jet, again, still well south of the state across the North Pacific. They're kind of angling back southeast 90 knots southwest of the Queen Charlottes. 9,000 feet, easterlies 30 knots, central Aleutians 35 knots across Shelikof Strait in the Alaska Peninsula there. And at 3,000 feet, pretty light winds, maybe 30 knots over the western Arctic coast. Turbulence not much, except maybe the Brooks Range is a little choppy. Hello again, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder with the National Weather Service for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. And joining us again, talking about the Augmented Reality Sandbox, is Eric Stevens from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska. And he's actually talking about a project from AKwx, which is the experimental program to stimulate competitive research. A lot of acronyms, but some really fun stuff today, right, Eric?
You bet. We've got a learning tool that is a tool that's fun to use, and it really has a relevance to actually daily lives of anyone who goes outside and sees lumpy topography in Alaska. We've got a lot of mountains and such. You know, when I was younger and go on your first hike in the hills, say, you're given, maybe you're in the Boy Scouts or you get at the kiosk at the trailhead, a topographic map, a flat piece of paper with all these lines on it, bullseyes, long lines that curve back on themselves, say, perhaps things that look like this. A quadrangle or a topographic map. We've got here just to illustrate a couple of examples near Denali. Alaska has so much topography, so many mountains. And what are all these lines that we see? It can be tough to know what this means the first time you look at it. What we've got, all these lines represent lines of where the elevation of the topography goes through a certain level above sea level. Say that this line represents where the mountains have gone from below 1,000 feet, mean sea level, up through 1,000 feet and above. That's your 1,000-foot contour. And when the mountain keeps going up, you're up to 1,200 feet, 1,400 feet, and so on. And that's how you get this little bullseye around the peak of a mountain.
Kind of makes layered slices, right?
Kind of like layered slices. Nice way to look at that. And when you see the lines are closer together, you're going up more steeply. If the mountain rises more slowly, it takes you longer in horizontal space to go through those different vertical increments. So
that is really hard to visualize.
Right. Imagine you're looking at a 2D piece of paper, two-dimensional piece of paper, but you're trying to understand what the three-dimensional world looks like. Well, enter the augmented reality sandbox. Yes, what is that? It is right here. We have the sandbox with us today, Sandbox 2.0, portable version.
Sweet.
Built up at University of Alaska Fairbanks. And we've got a couple of folks helping out today.
Let's see, Alana Valaji, and she's a mechanical engineering student from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. If you want to give us a thumbs up there, Alana, thanks for helping us out today. And Courtney Breest, she's the outreach coordinator from AKwx, also helping us out today. Thanks, Courtney.
And this tool here has a Microsoft Kinect to sense the level of sand in this sandbox. And then the Kinect feeds its information into a computer that then sends a signal to a projector to draw the appropriate topographic lines on this topography. The fun thing about this, as we can see here, is that the sandbox and its Kinect and its projector, they all work as a team. So here we've got a mountain in the middle of the sandbox. What if we took down the mountain to some degree? Watch as the software responds and redraws the topography.
Kind of a caldera forming there.
There you go, And what's fun about the sandbox too is it knows that gravity flows downhill, and we've got some water that's actually down in the lowest elevations. And what's happening now is we're making it rain a little bit. We'll fill up rain into that elevated lake bed, that caldera, as you said. And so now water is pooled up there. And what if you gouged out an outlet channel?
Glacial dam release.
There you go. The water flows out. What we're seeing here is a tool that allows people to touch and connect, Microsoft Connect, RRR, to connect two-dimensional topographic maps like what we have here, these flat things on a piece of paper, to the real three-dimensional world. I think this Sandbox's real particular application as a learning tool to young people is, what does a two-dimensional map mean when it's trying to represent the three-dimensional world? This sandbox is kind of both at once. It's actually three-dimensional, lumpy topography there, the sand, but it's got these lines drawn on the three-dimensional sand that would be on a two-dimensional piece of paper.
Wow, that is a huge leap from the learning that we experienced when we were younger to how children and even adults are visualizing in these new forms of technology. Allows that to kind of reshape their thinking and visualize this in a very useful and absolutely hands-on way. It's amazing.
It's a hands-on tool, and
it's hard for me to sit here and not go play with that.
Well, that's what happened at GINA, up at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks, when the first model was being made, the prototype with plywood and such. we had professional adult professor types had heard about this, and they came by because they wanted to see how it worked.
Okay.
And everyone becomes that idealistic, wonder-filled youngster.
Sure.
And you just can't help but play with that, and to see how it reacts in time, and
Right.
it's a dynamic learning tool, and it
Dynamic.
responds.
That's exactly the word.
And
Yeah.
you wonder what applicabilities beyond a teaching
Right.
tool for
Where does it
topography
go?
can it have. You can see how in Alaska we have inundation mapping is an issue. If you had water slosh inland, say in a coastal flooding event
Right.
on the western coast of Alaska or the Arctic coast, you could see this. The concept is illustrated here as an introductory learning method. I think this is a potentially good outreach tool for all of us in Alaska.
Okay, so not only just a topographical sense, a mapping sense, maybe something that leads into understanding of how geographic information systems work with GIS, but also geology, if we wanted to get into kind of the formations and the bigger land masses and the representation of the 2D map. We could go into hydrology, which is very important in Alaska, of course. And even just understanding the weather sense. Mounding up a big pile of sand could be that Arctic high pressure system sitting on top of Fairbanks, and the voids would be low pressure systems. This can go a lot of different directions.
Yes, exactly. It's not just landforms, but pressure has contours of high pressure and low pressure. And I wish I had had this kind of a learning tool when I was taking
kidding.
Meteorology 101 back 25 years ago.
wow.
Would have been helpful, I think.
Probably would have gotten a better grade, yeah. Okay, thank you so much for coming by, Eric, and Alana and Courtney, thank you so much for your help there in the sandbox. We are going to play in the sandbox a little bit more coming up tomorrow on our next edition of Alaska Weather Facts. We hope you join us for that. In the meantime, make sure you go to alaska.edu/EPSCOR. That's alaska.edu EPSCOR to learn more information about what we're doing with this augmented reality sandbox around Alaska. We'll see you next time on Alaska Weather Facts. And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Coastal water forecast. A little breezy on the south coast of the Panhandle. Small craft advisories are out for Tuesday. East winds expected at 25 knots, seas 10 feet. For the north coast, winds will be east to north at 20 knots with 8 to 10 foot seas. And the central northern inner channels, light variable winds at 10 knots with slight seas. In Clarence Strait, looking at a northwest breeze at 15 knots, seas around 3 feet. And then for the day on Wednesday, small craft advisories are Clarence Strait, southeast winds 25 knots. And for Stevens Passage, southeast winds 10 knots. Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, south winds at about 15. Small craft advisories along the coast, central and south coast, southeast winds 30 knots, seas around 10 feet, and 25 knot northerly winds on the north coast with 9 foot seas. Prince William Sound for Tuesday, east winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. North Gulf Coast, east winds 15 to 20 knots, seas around 7 feet. For the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay, east winds at 15 knots. And for Southern Cook Inlet, southwest winds 15 knots. And north of the Forelands, pretty light breezes, variable to south at 10 knots with slight seas. And for Wednesday, light variable winds for Northern Cook Inlet. Southern Cook Inlet west at 10 and back to light and variable conditions for Kamishak Bay. Northeast winds 15 knots for the Barren Islands with 8 foot seas. Eastern North Gulf Coast, Middleton Island, east winds 20 knots with 8 foot seas. Prince William Sound, light northwest breeze at 10 knots. Kodiak Island, northeast winds 20 knots, seas 6 feet. Alaska Peninsula, variable to east winds at 10 knots, pretty light, seas 2 to 3 feet. Light easterlies for the Bristol Bay zone with 2 foot seas and speeds at about 10 knots. And then for Kodiak Island on Wednesday, northeast winds 15 to 20 knots, seas at 4 feet for Shelikof Strait, but the Pacific side of Kodiak up to 10 feet. And for the area from Sitkinek to Cape Sarachev, winds will be north at 20 knots. Bering Sea side of the peninsula, variable winds at 10 knots. Bristol Bay, west winds at 15. Fox Islands, variable winds 10 knots tomorrow, seas around 3 feet. Light variable winds for Adak and Atka with 2 to 3 foot seas. Northeast winds 10 to 15 knots from Amchitka to Shemya with seas at 3 feet. And light wind pattern continues to the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians for Wednesday. Variable winds at 10 knots from Shemya to Amchitka Island. Adak and Atka, variable to northeast at 10, and light variable winds at 10 to 15 knots for the Fox Island, seas 2 to 4 feet. And for the Yukon Delta coast, brisk wind or small craft advisories, north winds 25 knots. Same forecast for St. Lawrence Island and St. Matthew Island. All small craft advisories are 25 knot northerlies. Norton Sound, north at 20. Otherwise, light winds. And for Wednesday, Pribilofs northeast at 15. West winds 20 knots for the Kuskokwim Delta coast. Small craft advisories for the Yukon Delta coast, northwest at 25 knots, north 25 for St. Matthew Island, 30 knot northerlies with 5-foot seas for St. Lawrence Island, and up along the Arctic coast, east-northeast at 15 knots for the central and east side. Small craft advisories, though, continued quite windy on the western Arctic coast, say Wainwright on down to Point Lay, all the way to Point Hope. For northeast winds sustained at 30 knots, seas at about 6 feet. Point Hope to Wales, looking northerly at 25 knots. And then 30 knot winds there from Wales to Cape Thompson, and Cape Thompson to Cape Beaufort. Small craft advisories for northeast winds at 30 knots. And the western Arctic coast, small craft advisories continue northeast at 25, and the central and eastern Arctic coast looking at east to northeast winds, 15 knots. For tonight, again, breezy, especially on the western Arctic coast. Could see gusts 35 miles an hour to the east and northeast. Maybe some fog and flurries along the eastern Arctic coast, possibly the North Slope. Temperatures in the 20s. And low clouds and fog, the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, and anywhere over the Bering Sea, low clouds and dense fog is possible, especially the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians. But look at the moisture moving westward and overcoming southeast Alaska and the southeast interior from southeast Alaska. And tomorrow, rain likely over south central Alaska, some scattered thunderstorms, Kuskokwim Valley, western Alaska range to the southwest mountains, drying out over the panhandle in between systems there, and then a chance of showers to the southeast coast. A little drier south central Alaska and the Copper River Basin, especially the North Gulf Coast with some sunshine. Dry and windy over the northern interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.